What does Canadian citizenship mean? Canadian qualities incorporate opportunity, regard for social contrasts, and a guarantee to social equity. We are pleased with the way that we are a serene country. Truth be told, Canadians, including migrants with Canadian citizenship, go about as peacekeepers in numerous nations around the globe. Canada is an enormous nation with a little populace. Canada has built up a novel administrative style of government that depends on bargain and concurrence. Canada esteems her majority rule government, and each resident is urged to do their offer, and her laws depend on our popularity-based qualities. Canadian qualities include equality. We regard everybody's privileges. Everybody has the option to stand up and express thoughts that others may differ with. Governments must treat everybody with equivalent poise and regard. Two other essential Canadian qualities. Respect for cultural differences. We attempt to comprehend and value the way of life, customs, and conventions, all things considered, regardless of whether they were conceived in Canada or came here from another nation. Freedom. As Canadians, we appreciate essential opportunities, for example, the opportunity of thought, the right to speak freely of discourse, the opportunity of religion, and the opportunity of quiet get-together. Peace. We are pleased with our peaceful society and our universal job as peacekeepers. Law and request. We regard law-based dynamic and the rule of law. We advance fair treatment so the courts and the police treat everybody decently and sensibly. We guarantee that our chosen governments stay responsible to Canadians. Canadian citizenship requirements. It is essential to realize that relying upon your circumstance, there might be extra necessities for the underneath list for you to become a Canadian citizen. You must breeze through an assessment on your privileges, obligations and information on Canada. You more likely than not lived in Canada for 3 out of the most recent 5 years. You must be a permanent resident, have documented your expenses, tax filing, on the off chance that you have to just as prove your language abilities. Key preferences of Canadian citizenship. There are various preferences in being a Canadian citizen. Turning into a Canadian citizen accompanies benefits that are not accessible to permanent residents, for example, access to confined occupations, the option to cast a ballot and pursue political position, and the capacity to go with a Canadian identification. Canadian residents likewise have the security of holding a status that isn't anything but difficult to lose or give up. Traveling. For some naturalized residents, a Canadian identification is a more valuable identification than an identification gave by the nation of birth, since numerous nations permit Canadians to enter without a visa for certain endorsed purposes. Canada perceives double citizenship, so on the off chance that your nation of birth likewise perceives double citizenship, at that point, you may wind up in the advantaged position of holding 2 travel papers. In the event that your nation of origin doesn't allow double citizenship, at that point, you might need to set aside some effort to assess the qualities and shortcomings of movement archives gave by both Canada and your nation of origin. Qualification for more jobs. Canadian residents are qualified for certain selected government occupations that require citizenship, just as employments requiring trusted status. Lasting residents, then again, may wind up with business decisions that are restricted by the status. Renewing of immigration documentation. Changeless resident cards are legitimate for just 5 years. The cards are required for universal travel and might be mentioned as evidence of permanent resident status by managers or other government officers. In this manner, permanent residents are in the unenviable situation of expecting to document another application for a permanent resident card and pay another expense, at regular intervals. Residents have no comparative commitment. A citizenship certificate is substantial uncertainty. Also, Canadian residents who wish to travel globally require just recharge their visas at regular intervals. Status retention worries. In contrast to permanent residents, who must conform to certain residency prerequisites, Canadians residents can invest as a lot of energy as they like outside of Canada with no movement outcomes. Likewise, Canadian citizens won't customarily lose citizenship whenever indicted for wrongdoing, while permanent residents will confront extradition if the wrongdoing is viewed as sufficiently genuine to justify this result. Pursuing political positions and voting. With Canadian citizenship comes the option to cast a ballot in common and national races. By casting a ballot, Canadian residents assume a significant job in impacting commonplace and government legislative issues. What's more, Canadian residents may hold political office, and speak to Canadian constituents on issues like expenses, instruction, and international strategy.